My daughter told me she wanted a dad date, something we used to do when she was a kid. She chose a fancy rooftop brunch spot and asked me to dress sharp. I was excited. We sat down and ordered. Then, halfway through, her mom and stepdad walked in. She immediately left me to join them on their table. I sat there alone for about 2 hours. When I tried to catch her attention, she shouted, "You are too selfish. Why are you bothering me? I just don't like how you always try to be around me." What happened next shocked everyone. I will tell you everything. First, if you enjoy stories like this, you want to be part of the 10% of our viewers who click on the like button. This really makes us happy. If you are yet to subscribe to our channel, kindly support us today by subscribing to this channel. This helps us to bring you more beautiful stories. It will be great to tell us where you are watching us from in the comments section. Now let's get into the details of the story. I hadn't worn a tie in 3 years, maybe 4. The knot sat awkwardly against my throat as I stood in front of the mirror that morning, trying to remember if it was supposed to be a Windsor or a half Windsor. My fingers fumbled, and for a second I chuckled to myself, the way I used to when she was small and tried to tie my shoes for me. She always knotted them too tight, like she was afraid I'd come undone if she didn't hold me together. That memory lingered as I straightened the collar, brushed imaginary lint off my blazer, and grabbed the car keys. My daughter had asked me to brunch, her idea. She called it a dad date, just like the ones we used to do when she was little. She'd even texted me a dress code. "Dress sharp, we're going to a rooftop spot downtown. Be ready at 10. I was more than ready. I was glowing. No, not just glowing, I was hopeful. Which, for someone like me, a man who had felt like a background extra in his own child's life for years, was dangerous. The drive to the restaurant was quiet, but my mind buzzed with old laughter. I remembered those Saturdays when she was 8, maybe 9, swinging her legs in the passenger seat, asking questions about everything. Why are flamingos pink? What does déjà vu mean? Did you love Mom back then? I answered every one as if they were sacred inquiries, even when the answers hurt. I never lied to her. That was our thing. I was always the honest parent, the stable one. Her mom had been a wildfire, charming but unpredictable, the kind of woman who could make you feel like the only man in the world 1 minute and a nuisance the next. We divorced when our daughter was 10. She chose to live with me then, said I made her feel safe. I never forgot that. Even when, after her mom remarried a guy with money and flash, she slowly drifted toward their world, I held on to that sentence like a prayer. You make me feel safe. That was my anchor. That was the reason I still said yes when she wanted to see me, even if those invitations had become fewer and further between. I got there early, as usual. I always did. I picked the table by the edge of the rooftop, where you could see the skyline stretch out like a promise. The waiter smiled politely and brought me water. I didn't touch it. I just kept glancing at my phone, waiting for her name to light up the screen. When she finally appeared, 5 minutes late but radiant in a soft pink dress, I stood up like a fool, grinning. She laughed, called me too formal, and gave me a quick side hug before sitting down. There was something off in her energy, something distracted, but I chalked it up to nerves or maybe a bad morning. I wasn't going to ruin this. I wasn't going to let my overthinking get in the way of what could be a rare, beautiful reconnection. So I smiled, complimented her dress, and told her I was proud of her. She blushed, looked away, and then asked if I still made that caramel French toast like I used to. I laughed and told her I hadn't made it since she stopped coming over. That earned me a small, guilty smile. For a moment, just a flicker, I thought I saw my daughter again. The little girl with syrup on her chin, not the young woman who now felt like a guest in my life. We ordered. She picked the most expensive dish on the menu, something with lobster and champagne sauce. I didn't care. I would have paid triple just to have that moment. She scrolled her phone under the table a few times, but she did ask about work, about how the house was doing, and even laughed when I told her I still hadn't figured out how to use the smart thermostat she installed last Christmas. "You're so analog, Dad," she teased. I took it. I took all of it, even the hollow parts. Because I missed her. Not just her presence, but her attention, her heart. I missed being the person she confided in. I missed being important. And that morning, for about 20 minutes, I let myself believe I still was. Then everything changed. Halfway through her entree, her eyes lit up, not for me, but for someone behind me. I turned just in time to see her mother and stepdad entering the restaurant. I froze. My stomach dropped like a stone in cold water. Her mom looked effortlessly glamorous, as always, and the stepdad, some finance guy, loaded, loud, and constantly performing like life was a stage, waved broadly. Before I could ask what was happening, my daughter stood up. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. They're joining us," she said, already halfway to their table. I blinked. "Wait, joining us? You invited them." But she didn't hear me, or pretended not to. She slid into their booth like she belonged there, like she hadn't been sitting with me just seconds ago, like I was some stranger who happened to share her DNA. I sat there still. Waiters passed me with trays of mimosas and laughter. Conversations hummed all around me, but I heard none of it. My daughter was laughing with her mom. Clinking glasses. I watched her pull out her phone, show them something funny, lean into her stepdad like he was the sun and she was orbiting. I didn't even exist. I tried to catch her eye. Maybe she'd come back. Maybe she'd realize how this looked. But when I raised my hand slightly, she turned and snapped loud enough for half the patio to hear. "You are too selfish. Why are you bothering me? I just don't like how you always try to be around me." The words hit like an open palm. I heard someone gasp. A couple at a nearby table looked at me with pity, the way people do when they witness something too private to be shared, but too loud to ignore. My throat closed up. I said nothing, just nodded slowly, placed my napkin on the table, and waved the waiter over. I paid for both our meals. Hers too. Out of habit. Out of some pathetic loyalty. Then I walked out, tie still tight, face burning. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something hollowed out in me that day. Something old and tender. Something I had protected for years. Hoping, always hoping, that maybe one day she'd come back. That day, I realized she never really left. She just changed where she wanted to belong. The drive back home was silent, not because I wanted silence, but because anything I could have said would have sounded ridiculous echoing off the windshield. I kept rehearsing different ways I could have responded. Maybe laughed it off, maybe called her name louder, so she'd have no choice but to turn around. Maybe even caused a scene and demanded an explanation right there at the rooftop brunch spot. But the truth is, when someone tells you who they are, even if they're your own child, you have to listen. And what she told me, in front of strangers, in front of her mother and stepfather, was that I was nothing more than an inconvenience. A background character in the story of her life she didn't want to acknowledge unless it was on her terms. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that she invited me under the pretense of love, or that she abandoned me so effortlessly when someone shinier walked in. I didn't go straight inside when I got home. I just sat in the car with the engine off, keys still dangling, the air thick with disappointment and leftover cologne. My hands were clenched around the steering wheel like it could anchor me back to some earlier moment, back before the brunch, back when I was still naive enough to think she wanted me there because she missed me, because she remembered what we had. I stared at the dashboard until the silence started buzzing. Finally, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Her name was still listed under authorized users. She had a secondary card tied to my account, and for months, I justified it by telling myself she was in between jobs, that she was trying to find stability, that it was temporary, that it was love. But in that moment, all of it felt like a setup. Not a partnership, not support, just another way to keep me useful without ever being wanted. I removed her access in seconds. It felt cold. It felt brutal, but it also felt necessary. I sat with that action, stared at the confirmation message on the screen until my vision blurred. She didn't call immediately. I thought maybe she wouldn't notice. Maybe she was still too busy laughing with her stepdad over avocado toast and bellinis to realize she'd lost access to my account. But less than 30 minutes later, the phone rang. Her name lit up the screen like a warning light. I stared at it, let it buzz once, twice, then picked up. "Hey," she said, breezy at first, like nothing had happened. "I think there's something wrong with the card. It's declining. Can you check?" I said nothing. The pause dragged just long enough for her tone to change. "Dad? Hello." I exhaled. "I removed your access." "What?" she snapped, her voice rising like I'd set fire to something sacred. "Why?" I'm trying to pay for brunch. I almost laughed, but it came out like a cough. Exactly. What's that supposed to mean? She barked, suddenly all sharp edges. It means I'm not paying for your lunch with them, I said calmly, but firmly. I was already humiliated once today. You don't get to spend my money on the people you ditched me for. There was a pause, sharp, tense, dangerous. Then came the explosion. You are so petty, she hissed. I knew it. You always make everything about you. You couldn't just let me have a moment with them without getting jealous like a child. I'm not jealous, I said, and for once it was the truth. I'm just tired of being used. Used? She repeated like I'd insulted her ancestry. I invited you. You're the one who made it awkward. You could have just joined us. You left me. I interrupted, my voice low, slow. You invited me, sat down with me, ordered with me, and then left to sit with people who didn't even know I was supposed to be there. You call me selfish. In front of a restaurant full of people. And now you're calling me for money. There was silence. Not regret. Just silence. She hadn't considered it from that angle, and I could hear her trying to spin the situation back into her favor. That had always been her pattern. Deny, deflect, demand. But something in me had changed. That tie I wore, the one I hadn't touched in years, it was already off and tossed on the kitchen counter. That part of me that kept dressing up for her approval, showing up for the crumbs, bending for every small invitation. I was done. I'm not reinstating your access, I said flatly. Pay with your own card. Or ask them to cover it. You're unbelievable, she growled. I'm still your daughter. You were, I said. Until you made it very clear you didn't want that title unless it came with perks. She hung up. The silence afterward wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, dense, but not uncertain. I went upstairs and started pulling her things together. Bags, makeup, books, shoes she never wore, but liked to keep in the hallway closet. I didn't do it angrily. I didn't throw anything, or scream, or pace. I did it like I was packing up after a long stay at a hotel I couldn't afford anymore. Methodical, quiet, intentional. I lined everything up by the front door. I didn't know what I'd say when she came back. I didn't even know if she would. But I knew she didn't live here anymore. Not in the way that mattered. That night, I watched the porch light flicker above her bags. I didn't touch them. I didn't check my phone. I just sat in the living room with the TV off, my tie still coiled like a dead snake across the counter, and I waited for something to shift in me. Grief, maybe. Rage. But all I felt was hollow resolve. The kind of empty that doesn't ache, it just confirms. She came back that evening just after dark, headlights washing over the bags I'd stacked neatly on the porch. For a moment, I stood behind the living room curtains, watching her silhouette step out of the car, phone still glued to her hand like it was part of her nervous system. She paused when she saw her things. Not dramatically, just a flicker of hesitation, the kind you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Then she walked up the porch steps slowly, like maybe the bags were a misunderstanding. Like maybe she was the victim of a mix-up. I didn't move. I didn't open the door. I wanted to see what she would do. I needed to know if even now, after everything, she'd knock gently, ask to talk, try to fix what she broke. But she didn't. She rattled the handle first, like she had every right to walk back into my house, like the locks were just a formality. When it didn't budge, she pounded the door 3 times and shouted, "Open up. This isn't funny." I opened the door just far enough for her to see me. No chain, no threats, just a tired face and a decision that had already been made. She looked at me like I was a stranger who'd stolen her key. Her eyes were wide, but not in fear, in disbelief. Like she couldn't fathom that I, the man who had bent over backward for her since she was old enough to spell her name, had finally stood up straight. "I live here," she said, her voice breaking like she was about to cry. "You can't just kick me out like this." "You don't live here," I replied quietly. "You stay here. There's a difference." Her mouth fell open. "Seriously? After one brunch? You're acting like I'm some stranger." I could feel my jaw tighten, not from anger, but from restraint. "You invited me. You left me. You embarrassed me. And then you tried to use my money to pay for a meal with the people you abandoned me for." That wasn't one brunch. That was a billboard. "Oh my God," she snapped, stepping forward like she could will the door open with her presence. "You are so dramatic. I can't believe you're making this about you. Again. No, I said, still calm. I'm finally making it about me. That's the difference. She scoffed, crossing her arms like a child who didn't get her way. I was going to explain everything. You didn't give me a chance. You shouted at me across a restaurant. I reminded her, keeping my tone measured even as the memory of her voice still echoed in my ears. You called me selfish for trying to get your attention. You said I was always trying to be around you, like that was some crime. You made your choice very clear. I just accepted it. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said, and her voice dropped, trying to slide back into that manipulative calm she always used when she needed something. I was going to hang out with you after. Things got a little chaotic, okay? I laughed once, sharp and joyless. Chaotic? You had time to eat an entire meal, to toast glasses, to laugh at whatever joke he made. You just didn't have time for me. She stepped back, stunned. For the first time in years, I think she realized I wasn't bluffing, that there was no path back inside tonight, that the man standing in front of her wasn't the same one who used to leave the porch light on just in case she changed her mind. She blinked, and her voice turned cold. So what now? You're just cutting me off? What? You think that's going to make me come crawling back to you? I don't want you crawling, I said. I want you to grow up. That hit her. Not deeply enough to change her mind, but just enough to bruise her pride. Her face twisted in frustration as she spun around, pacing in a tight circle by the edge of the porch. You're heartless. You know that. You're the one who raised me to be independent, and now you're punishing me for it. No, I said simply. I raised you to be respectful, and to recognize who shows up for you, not to use people and throw them away when someone flashier walks in. Her mouth opened like she was about to retaliate, but I didn't give her the chance. I called security, I added. They'll be here in 10 minutes. If you're still here, they'll escort you off the property. Her eyes went wide. You didn't. I did, I said. Because I'm done arguing on my doorstep with someone who only sees me when it's convenient. She stared at me like she was trying to burn through my resolve with her glare, but there was nothing left to burn. I had already gone up in flames hours earlier, sitting alone in that restaurant, waiting for her to remember that I existed. Whatever was left of me now was made of stone. She turned to her phone, probably calling her mom or her stepdad, maybe even just pretending to so she wouldn't have to face the humiliation of being shut out. I didn't care. I slowly closed the door, locked it, and walked away. No slamming, no shouting, just finality. Inside, I sat down on the couch and waited. I heard her muttering outside, then the quiet shuffle of her dragging her bags back to the car. I didn't peek through the blinds this time. I didn't need to. When security arrived, I just waved them off with a nod. She was gone. Not just from the porch. From the pedestal I had placed her on. From the space in my life that I had carved out for her comfort, even when she had stopped offering me the same. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I regretted anything, but because the silence finally had weight. The house had always been quiet when she wasn't home, but now that silence was loaded with meaning. It was the sound of boundaries finally being respected, of peace that didn't come at the cost of my dignity. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, not sad, not angry, just exhausted and free. It wasn't the first time she had called me heartless, but it was the first time I didn't feel the sting of it. That word used to cut me in half. It used to spiral through my thoughts for days, making me question every decision I had made as a father, whether I was too strict, too cold, too tired, too honest. But that night, standing on the other side of the locked door, I realized she didn't call me heartless because I lacked compassion. She called me heartless because, for once, I had enough self-respect not to let her weaponize my love against me. And that wasn't cruelty. That was survival. That was finally learning how to protect the pieces of myself I had spent too long handing away for free. The next morning, her perfume still lingered faintly in the hallway, clinging to the edge of the guest room she used to claim as hers. I walked past it, not pausing, not peeking in. I went straight to the kitchen, brewed a cup of coffee, and sat down in the same chair I'd occupied the night before. The house was too still, too orderly. Every framed photo on the wall stared back at me like frozen memories. Her fourth-grade dance recital, the two of us at the Grand Canyon, a candid from her 16th birthday, where she had hugged me tighter than she had anyone else in the room. I didn't take them down. I didn't throw them away. I wasn't trying to erase her. I was just learning how to stop erasing myself. Around 9 a.m., my phone rang. I knew it would. She'd always had this belief that silence from me meant I was waiting for her to explain. She didn't realize that silence could also mean a door was no longer open. I let it ring twice before I answered. I didn't say hello. Her voice came in sharp, clipped. So is this how it is now? You're just locking me out like I'm some stranger. You made that choice, I said, my voice even calm. I just closed the door behind it. She laughed, bitter. I can't believe you. You're seriously choosing to cut your own daughter out of your life over what? One awkward brunch. It wasn't one brunch, I replied. It was a pattern. Years of one-sided effort. You only reach out when you need something. You stop by to pick up mail, or a check, or rest in comfort. But I stopped being your father the moment I stopped being convenient. She said nothing. The silence that followed wasn't guilt. It was calculation. She was trying to find the angle again, to locate the weak point in the boundary I had built overnight. She'd done it before. Tears, apologies, even brief stints of affection. But I'd finally realized those moments weren't bridges, they were detours. Temporary, transactional, never real. I want to come back, she said finally. To the house. I don't want to stay with Mom. Why not? I asked. There was another pause. Then, it's not the same. No, I agreed. It's not. She hesitated again, but this time, I heard it, the edge of panic in her voice, the subtle tremble of someone who'd lost their safety net and was just now realizing how high off the ground she really was. Dad, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't mean to make you feel like that. I was just caught off guard. I didn't plan for them to show up. But you joined them, I said, not harshly, just stating the facts. You sat with them for 2 hours. You looked happy. And when I tried to get your attention, you humiliated me. I was overwhelmed, she whispered. I didn't think. You did think. I cut in, not angrily but firmly. You thought enough to call me selfish. To say I was always trying to be around you. That doesn't come out of nowhere. You felt that way for a while. She didn't deny it. That told me everything. I don't think we should talk right now, I said. Not until you can come to me with something more than damage control. What's that supposed to mean? She asked, voice sharpening. It means you're not coming back here today, I said. And probably not tomorrow, either. You're seriously doing this? She hissed. Throwing me away over your pride? No, I replied. I'm finally choosing mine over your convenience. She hung up again. This time I didn't flinch. Later that afternoon, I got a call from her mother, of course. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me and I listened. Her tone was performative, as always, full of passive-aggressive sweetness. I'm not sure what happened between you and our daughter, but she's really upset, and I think maybe you're both being a little dramatic. If you could just let her come back for a few days, I'm sure everything would smooth over. We can't keep having these flare-ups every time you feel left out. Let's be adults. I didn't call back. It amazed me how quickly the blame shifted. I had been left, disrespected, used. And yet now I was the one being labeled difficult. The stubborn parent. The one refusing to be the bigger person. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. I was done being the bigger person just so other people could stay small without consequences. That night, I changed the locks. Not out of fear, but finality. I stood by the door as the locksmith worked, his tools clicking rhythmically, and for the first time in days, I felt something close to relief. It wasn't joy. It wasn't victory. It was the quiet dignity of reclaiming my space, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I walked through every room afterward, touching nothing, just letting the silence settle like dust on skin. This was my home, mine, and I had finally locked the part of it that hurt me most. Before bed, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote in my journal. One sentence, nothing fancy. Just, she left me at a table, and I didn't follow her. That was the truth, the clearest I'd ever seen it. I was no longer chasing people who walked away from me, family or not. The silence felt different now. It wasn't the same kind of silence I had grown used to, the kind that hovered like fog in the house when she wasn't home, filled with hope that she'd come through the door again, throw her bag down, and tell me about something that happened at work or some drama with her mom. That silence had always been waiting for her. But this silence wasn't waiting anymore. This silence had made peace with itself. It had settled into the walls, into the air, into the worn-in spot on the couch where she used to sit with her feet up, scrolling endlessly on her phone. And for the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't waiting either. I wasn't checking the clock. I wasn't checking my phone. I was just sitting with it. I cleaned that morning. Not angrily. Not in the way people do when they're trying to scrub away evidence of someone they've lost. It was quieter than that. I vacuumed. I wiped down the counters. I folded laundry that had been sitting too long in the dryer. Every motion felt deliberate, like I was reclaiming space that had been slowly overtaken by uncertainty and emotional clutter. I boxed up the last of her things, not as punishment, but for closure. The old hoodie of mine she used to wear, the one she stopped asking about a year ago, still hung on the back of the guest room door. I folded it gently, laid it on top of her books, and taped the box shut. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just breathed, long and deep, and carried the box into the garage. It wasn't until the doorbell rang around noon that I even remembered the world outside my own head. I opened it to find Marcus, my longtime friend, standing on the porch with a half-empty gas station coffee and that same skeptical look he always gave me when he thought I was about to do something emotionally reckless. Marcus and I had been friends since college. We drifted here and there, but he always showed up when the storm clouds gathered. Never early, never late, just when it started to feel like I was too far in my own head to climb out. He stepped inside without asking, took one look around the quiet, spotless house, and said, "So, you finally hit the eject button." I nodded, gesturing toward the kitchen. "Coffee." He raised the one in his hand. "Got some. Cheap and terrible. Keeps me honest." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the one she and I used to eat at when she was younger, back when her favorite meal was scrambled eggs and toaster waffles. Marcus didn't speak at first. He never rushed into things. He just let the silence stretch long enough for me to start filling it, which I always did. "She embarrassed me," I finally said. "Invited me to brunch, left me mid-meal, sat with her mom and stepdad like I wasn't even there. When I tried to get her attention, she said I was selfish, like I was a problem just for showing up." Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee. "That the same stepdad she used to say she couldn't stand?" "The very same," I said. "Guess time and money change everything." He leaned back, sighing. "And you cut her off?" "I cut her access off. Then I packed her things. She showed up, demanded I let her in. Called me heartless. I didn't budge." "Good," he said. I blinked. "Good." He shrugged. "You've been bending backward for that girl for years. Always making excuses. Always saying she's young, or she's figuring things out. At some point, she's not young anymore. At some point, she's figured out exactly how far she can push you, and how much you'll let her get away with." I didn't respond right away. I knew he was right. That's what made it hard to hear. I had always prided myself on being the safe place for her, the soft landing. But maybe I had been so focused on being the gentle parent that I forgot she needed to learn about consequences too. Real ones. Not lectures. Not passive-aggressive disappointment. Actual lines she couldn't cross without losing something. She said she preferred to stay with me. I murmured, staring into my untouched coffee. But it was obvious she only meant because of the comfort, the space, the lack of rules. Marcus nodded slowly. "You ever ask yourself why she felt safe enough to treat you like a doormat, but not the other way around?" That hit hard. I leaned back, arms crossed, staring out the window. The sky was overcast, clouds thick and gray. It was the kind of day we used to call a stay-in day when she was a kid, blankets on the couch, movies playing back to back, her head on my shoulder. That version of her felt like a ghost now. I wondered when the shift had happened. When had I stopped being someone she loved and started being someone she tolerated when convenient? "She texted yesterday," I said. "Just I miss you. Nothing else. No apology. No explanation." "That's not a text," Marcus said. "That's a test. She wants to see if the door still opens without her knocking." "And it doesn't," I said quietly. "Good," he said again. We didn't say much after that. Just sat there, the quiet settling in again, but it wasn't lonely. It was restful. That's the part most people don't understand about cutting someone off. Even when it hurts, there's relief underneath. Like unclenching your jaw after grinding your teeth in your sleep. Like finally standing up straight after walking hunched over for years. You feel the ache, yes, but you also feel the air returning to your lungs. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. No checking the phone. No pacing the hallway. No standing by the front window waiting for headlights to appear. Just sleep. Full, deep, and still. The kind of rest that only comes when your heart isn't spending every minute waiting for someone who's already left. 2 weeks passed. Not a knock, not a call, not even a guilt-soaked text. The silence should have hurt. It should have hollowed me out. But instead, it became routine. I'd wake up, walk the hallways that used to echo with her footsteps, brew my coffee in a kitchen that no longer had her lipstick-stained mugs left in the sink, and sit by the window without scanning the street for her car. There was nothing performative about it. I wasn't pretending to be strong. I wasn't staging peace for appearances. I had just stopped bleeding. I didn't realize how long I'd been cut open until the wound finally closed, and the air around me no longer stung. I got an email from her the following Sunday. Just a few lines. No greeting, no real warmth. I know we both said things we didn't mean. I need some time to figure stuff out. Hope you're okay. That was it. And I'll be honest, my first instinct was to read it twice, looking for signs of remorse hidden between the punctuation. I read it like someone digging through rubble, hoping to find a single photograph that survived the fire. But there was nothing there. No ownership. No apology. Just distance packaged in polite neutrality. It wasn't peace. It was PR, something she could point to later and say, well, I tried. But she hadn't. Not really. She'd send a message the way you toss a rock into a pond. Not because you care about what it hits, but because you want to see the ripples. I didn't respond. Not out of malice. Not even out of pride. I just didn't have anything to say that hadn't already been said with locked doors, canceled cards, and silence held with intention. I had made my decision, and I was finally comfortable sitting in it. That didn't mean I stopped loving her. That part doesn't shut off. That's the part no one tells you about being a parent. You can draw every boundary in the world. You can say enough 1,000 times, but that primal ache never fully disappears. I still worried. I still hoped she was eating well, sleeping enough, not spiraling. But I did it from a distance now. Quietly. Privately. Without offering up the pieces of myself for her to step on while she figured out whether I was worth kindness that day. One night, maybe 3 weeks after the rooftop brunch, I got home late from work. The porch light was still on. Habit, I guess. I stepped out of the car and immediately noticed a cardboard box resting neatly by the door. No note. Just taped shut, clean, with my name scribbled on top in black Sharpie. I carried it inside and sat with it on the kitchen table for a few minutes before opening it. Inside were a few familiar things. My old tie, the one I wore to brunch, a framed photo of the two of us at her high school graduation, and the leather-bound journal I'd given her years ago, still mostly blank except for one folded sheet tucked into the front cover. It wasn't a letter, not exactly. Just a page torn from a notebook, the handwriting uneven, like she hadn't written in a while or had done it quickly. It read, I don't know why I acted like that. Maybe I do. Maybe I just didn't want to choose between the two versions of my life, so I tried to juggle them both and dropped you in the process. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted to return what I borrowed. I'm staying at Mom's for now. Take care of yourself. It wasn't what I wanted, not really. It didn't heal anything. It didn't undo the restaurant, or the shouting, or the way she made me feel like a ghost sitting at a table meant for two. But it was something. A gesture. A flicker. Not of reconciliation, but of recognition. She knew what she'd done, even if she couldn't say it outright. And maybe that was all she could offer. Maybe that's all she ever would. And I had to decide, was that enough to open the door again? It wasn't. Not yet. I folded the note back into the journal, placed it back in the box, and stored it in the hallway closet, out of sight, but not destroyed. Because this wasn't about revenge. I wasn't interested in punishing her. I wasn't interested in freezing her out forever. But I was interested in protecting the man who had spent too long being patient, being understanding, being the bigger person, while his heart was slowly being eroded by someone who only showed up to take. So I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't reach out with a soft, thank you, that she could mistake for permission to return like nothing had happened. I left the moment where it was. Her action had been small, but it was something. Mine was bigger. Mine was the choice to hold my boundary, even in the face of sentimentality. That's what growth looks like sometimes. It's not loud. It's not angry. It's a quiet refusal to accept less than you deserve, even from the people you love most. I went for a walk that night. The air was cold, brisk, cleansing. I passed the park we used to visit when she was a kid, back when I'd push her on the swings and pretend I was launching her into the stars. I stopped there for a moment, watching the wind sway the empty swings, and I thought about how hard it is to let go of the idea of someone. Not even who they are, but who you hoped they'd become. That's what hurts the most. Not losing them, but losing the version of them you were still waiting on. But as I stood there, I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't look like yelling or slamming doors. It looks like silence, distance, and the strength to not reach out first. If you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you love, especially your own child, drop a comment below. Was it the hardest thing you've ever done, or the most freeing? Let's talk about the messy side of family. If this story hit close to home, don't forget to like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real stories about tough love and self-respect. See you soon in the next one.